Hello everyone, and welcome to a brand new science fiction story. In this episode, we'll be listening to the story of Matteo and the alien woman Naomi. Close your eyes and enjoy the story. Happy viewing. A man was about to be executed, but an alien woman defied the entire galaxy to save him. The morning of his execution, Matteo's chief complaint was the bread. It had been part of the traditional last meal, which on Corvath was a legally mandated act of mercy, administered by people with no discernible talent for mercy or bread. The loaf had arrived at his cell with the density of a small moon and the flavor of a warm apology. He had eaten it anyway, on the theory that a man ought to face his death without a grudge, and had spent the last 4 hours of his life quietly revising that theory. 9 worlds had agreed to kill him. Not one of them had thought to check the proofing time. They walked him out at the gray end of night. 2 guards in ceremonial silver, who had clearly been chosen for height rather than conversation. The corridor smelled of stone dust and antiseptic, and somewhere above him the square was already making the low, patient ocean sound of a crowd that had arrived early for good seats. "Big turnout," Matteo observed. The left guard said nothing. "You'd think they'd have something better to do. It's a 9th day. Don't you people have markets?" The right guard said nothing with a slightly different quality, which Matteo chose to interpret as warmth. Then the doors opened, and the square swallowed him whole. Corvath's execution square had been built 400 years ago by an architect who understood that justice, to be truly satisfying, requires excellent sight lines. It descended in 9 terraced rings of black basalt toward a single flat stone at the center, and every ring was full. Above them, the sky was doing something extravagant with the dawn, a bruised violet shading up into copper, the 2 moons still hanging there like unpaid bills. And beyond the sky, in a lattice so precise it looked drawn, hung the fleets, 9 of them. He could see the running lights, hard little pinpricks against the fading stars, arranged in the geometry of a signature. 9 worlds, for one courier with a bad haircut and a debt problem. Matteo felt, obscurely, that he ought to be flattered. A vendor was working the 3rd ring with a tray of commemorative ribbons, black and silver, Holloway remembered stitched in 9 languages. Business appeared brisk. As they marched him past, the vendor caught his eye, hesitated with the pure professional agony of a man who has just recognized his own product, and then, because commerce is the last honest thing in the universe, held one up hopefully. "I'm a little short," Matteo said, also tied up. They bound him to the post with cord that had been blessed by somebody, which struck him as a wasted blessing. The stone under his boots had a shallow dish worn into it. 4 centuries of people standing in exactly this spot, shifting their weight exactly this way. He found that oddly companionable. Whatever else was true, he wasn't the first idiot to stand here and think about bread. The arbiter rose. Owen was a tall man who wore his silver hair the way other men wear an inheritance, and he had the finest teeth in the Concord, which he deployed now in a smile of enormous weightless kindness. Matteo had been in his presence exactly 4 times, and had come away each time with the impression of being read rather than seen, of having been priced, filed, and shelved. "Matteo," Owen said, and the square's acoustics took his voice and laid it gently over every ear present. "Of no house, no world, and no allegiance." "That's the one. 9 years ago you destroyed the 9th beacon at Holloway Drift. 411 souls were aboard, among them the full Sylthan delegation, under seal of peace." A pause, exquisitely judged. "You have never denied it." "No," Matteo agreed. "I haven't." He watched Owen absorb that again, with the faint irritation of a man who has never quite forgiven the accused for making the trial so easy. 9 years of tribunals, of adjournments and appeals filed by people he'd never met. And Matteo had said the same 11 words every time. And every time it had landed wrong, like a note played correctly on a broken instrument. Owen read the sentence. It was long. 9 worlds meant 9 attestations, and each world had a formula, and one of the formulas rhymed. Matteo let his attention wander up past the terraces to the sky, where the dawn had finished with copper and moved on to gold, and thought that it was really a very beautiful morning to be so thoroughly finished with. Which is when the sky opened. Not poetically, actually, a ripping seam of white above the eastern terraces, the unmistakable indecency of an unscheduled atmospheric entry, and the crowd's ocean sound turned inside out. 9 fleets lit up at once. Matteo, who had spent 11 years hauling cargo through places where the sky opening was rarely good news, felt something in his chest that he had no business feeling at that hour. It was a salvage tug. A salvage tug. It came down through the haze on failing repulsors, gouted steam, kissed the basalt with the grace of a dropped anvil, and sat there ticking and steaming in the middle of the most sacred flagstones in the Concorde. The hatch fell open. A woman stepped out, green as a riverstone in shallow water, dark-haired, long-eared, unarmed, wearing no house colors at all. She crossed the square without hurrying. She did not look at the tribunal. She did not look at the fleets. She walked to the post where Matteo stood bound, turned, put her back to him, and stopped. And Matteo, who had made peace with dying, discovered he had made no peace whatsoever with Naomi. For 11 seconds, nothing in the galaxy happened. Matteo counted them, because there was very little else to do with his hands. Above the square, 9 fleets held 9 firing solutions on a single unarmed woman, standing on holy ground. And somewhere in 9 flagships, 9 tactical officers were discovering that their entire education had been theoretical. Doctrine had a great deal to say about aggression. Doctrine had chapters on hostage protocol, on ceremonial breach, on the correct disposition of forces when a sovereign vessel entered a sentencing airspace. Doctrine had absolutely nothing to say about a noblewoman of the Green Houses standing very still and declining to explain herself. The first ring of the crowd, being nearest, discovered a sudden urgent interest in the rings behind them. "Lady Naomi," said Owen, and his voice had lost some of its gentle weight. "You are standing in a sentencing circle." "I know," said Naomi. "It's beautifully maintained." "Step aside." "No." She said it the way one declines a second helping. Matteo, who had a professional appreciation for people who could lie to fleets, noted that she wasn't lying at all, which was significantly worse. Owen came down 2 steps of the tribunal terrace, which for Owen was the equivalent of throwing a chair. "The conquered will have your reasons. The Concorde will not. You are the ratified heir of the Sylthan Green Houses. You signed the Holloway Accord. Your name is on the sentence, my lady. Your own hand, 3rd seal from the left, I can see it from here." He gestured at the great illuminated writ hanging above the terraces, where the seals glowed in their 9 colors like a row of very smug traffic lights. "Explain yourself." "No," said Naomi. And that, Matteo realized with a slow, cold slide of understanding, was the whole strategy. There was no leverage, no bargain, no clever legal instrument. She had brought nothing to the square except her body and her refusal, and the appalling genius of it was that the Concorde's entire architecture of law assumed people had reasons you could argue with. Faced with none, 9 worlds simply jammed, like a lock with no keyhole. "Hello," Matteo said quietly to the back of her head. "Hello. You've got about 400 guns on you." 612, said Naomi, without turning. "I counted on the way down. There's a Vascan cruiser hiding behind the second moon that thinks nobody can see it. It's very sweet, actually." "Naomi." "Don't," she said. "Say my name in that voice. You'll ruin it." They brought her house mother down within the hour, which told Matteo something about how badly the tribunal was rattled. You did not scramble a Sylthan matriarch across half a system unless the alternative was firing on her daughter live in front of 9 worlds. Elena came out onto the terrace in full green, silver-eared, magnificent, and made the mistake every parent in history has made, which is to begin with reasonableness. "Come up, child." "No. You are cold and this stone is ugly and you have not eaten." "That's true," Naomi allowed. "The bread here is reportedly criminal." Vindication of me, Matteo muttered. Elena tried threat next, and it was better constructed but landed no harder. The houses would withdraw, the treaties would lapse, the marriage compacts would dissolve, the seat would pass sideways to a cousin with a laugh like a startled bird. Naomi listened to the whole inventory of her own life being auctioned off and said nothing at all. And Matteo watched a woman he had once carried through a burning corridor stand and let it go, piece by piece, without so much as shifting her weight. Then Elena's voice changed, flattened, formalized, and Matteo understood a beat too late what was coming. Then, before the 9, Elena said, "I unname her." The illuminated writ flickered. The third seal from the left went dark, and the crowd made a sound like a held breath being dropped. "I was fond of that seal," Naomi said. Her voice was perfectly level. Matteo, standing close enough to feel it, heard the small, ruined thing underneath. "Why?" he said. "Naomi, why? We met for 9 minutes, 9 years ago. You don't even—" He stopped. "You don't even remember it, do you?" For the first time, she turned her head, just enough that he caught the edge of her profile. The long ear, the dark eye. "I remember a hand," she said. "That's all. 9 years, and what I have is a hand and a smell of burning, and the certainty that I owe someone something enormous, and no face." She looked forward again. "So no, I don't remember you. I came anyway. Do you understand how much worse that makes it?" "Not remotely." "Good," said Naomi. "Then we're even." The tug behind them coughed. It was, Matteo would reflect later, a genuinely rude noise, the sound of an engine clearing its throat with intent. A hatch panel on the hull slid aside, and a mining laser deployed on a scarred, articulated arm with the enthusiasm of a dog that has finally been asked to fetch something. "Right," said a voice from the tug, at a volume that rearranged several ribbons in the third ring. "I have been listening to 9 worlds talk about procedure for 2 hours and 11 minutes, which is longer than my last owner survived, and I want everyone in this attractive stone hole to understand something." The arm swung. "I am a Class 4 salvage unit. I do not do procedure. I do cutting things." 9/10, said Naomi. "Not the tribunal." "Not the whole tribunal," said 9/10, and fired. The beam took the post off at the base, and Matteo discovered that 4 centuries of sacred basalt cut about as well as anything else once you stopped being sentimental about it. The post toppled. He went with it, still bound to the thing, and had a brief, intimate encounter with the flagstones before a hand closed on his collar and hauled. "Up," said Naomi. "I am attached to a log. Then run creatively." He ran creatively. Behind him, 9/10 was carving thoughtful decorative notches out of the tribunal terrace, not through it, a distinction Matteo appreciated intellectually while sprinting with a 2-meter beam lashed to his spine. The square had become a single organism with 4,000 legs, all of them leaving. Somewhere in it, Owen was shouting for a firing order that no admiral in orbit was going to give, while a Sylthan-blooded woman, unnamed or not, stood inside the blast cone. The hatch swallowed them. The tug went up like a thrown brick. "Strap in," said 9/10, "or don't. I'm not your mother, though statistically I've outlived several." The next 40 minutes were unpleasant in ways Matteo lacked the vocabulary for. Corvath's gravity well was a stone bowl full of angry hornets, and the tug threaded it the way a drunk threads a needle, by luck, repeatedly, with feeling. 9/10 provided commentary throughout in the manner of a sports announcer working a match it had money on. "And the Kessler picket is coming about. Oh, that's ugly. That's a rookie intercept. They've overcommitted the port element. Look at them go. Look at them absolutely go in the wrong direction." Matteo, still lashed to a piece of Corvath's judiciary, was sick twice and apologized once. They came out the far side of the second moon into the dead quiet of open space, and the tug settled into a long ballistic drift with its emissions cold, and there was nothing to hear but the tick of cooling plating. Naomi cut him loose. She did it with a rigging knife and no ceremony, sawing through blessed cord while he sat on a crate of unlabeled Vascan salvage, and neither of them said anything for a while. The galley, he discovered, was the size of a generous coffin. 2 fold-down benches, a heating plate with 1 working element, a wall of cargo netting stuffed with the archaeological strata of a life lived in transit. There was nowhere to look that wasn't her. "You'll want to eat," she said. "I want to know why 9 worlds just watched the heir of the Green Houses commit career suicide over a courier. Those are compatible." She put a ration pouch on the plate. "Eat, and I'll be insufferable about it while you chew." The story came out sideways, the way real ones do, in pieces, out of order, with long gaps where the heating element ticked. Holloway Drift had never been a beacon. That was the part the Concorde had spent 9 years being careful about. It was a quarantine platform, one of 4, and the thing it quarantined was called the hollowing, which was not a disease of the body at all. It ate memory. Not violently. That was the horror of it. It moved along the neural lattice like frost across a window, quietly, politely, taking faces first, then names, then the small procedural knowledge of how to be a person. The infected did not suffer. They simply became less, and were pleasant about it, and eventually forgot how to breathe. "There's no cure," Naomi said. "There's never been a cure. There's only ever been protocol, and the protocol is sterilization with all souls aboard, because the alternative is a station full of very calm people who can't remember what a door is." "I know," said Mateo. "I read it, 9 years ago, on a screen, in a corridor, with the alarm going." She went still. He hadn't meant to start there. He'd meant to build up to it, to layer it, to give her something manageable. But he was tired, and the bread had been bad, and there was no dignified way to explain the worst night of your life to the woman you'd carried out of it. "I was a courier," he said, 19 hours out from Holloway with a hold full of nothing important, medical consumables. They flagged me for emergency docking and then they stopped answering, which in my line of work is the whole warning you get. So I docked, and it was quiet. Everything was quiet. And the lights were on, and there were people sitting in the concourse being very polite to each other, and none of them knew where they were. And the delegation? Gone, most of them. 2 still walking. One of them thanked me for a gift I hadn't given her. He turned the ration pouch over in his hands. The station AI had already made the call. Reactor purge. 16 minutes. No override. It was doing exactly what it should. And I found one door with a hard seal on it. And behind the door was a girl who was screaming, which meant she still knew enough to be afraid, which meant she was the only person on that station who hadn't gone quiet yet. Naomi's hands had folded very carefully in her lap. 16 minutes wasn't enough to purge the spread, Mateo said. Fire's slower than frost, so I pulled the containment interlocks and blew the core early. 8 minutes. It stopped it. He shrugged, and the shrug came out badly. And it killed 411 people who were already dead and didn't know it, and one of them was your delegation, and the Concord had a very good reason to never, ever say the word hollowing out loud in a courtroom. "So they said beacon," Naomi whispered, "and they said sabotage. And I said nothing," said Mateo, because the alternative was telling 9 worlds that the miracle girl who came home from Holloway had been inside the seal. They hid in the bones of a dead orbital. It had been a Vascan transfer yard once, a great slow wheel of scaffolding and gantries, and when the Vascans lost the contract, they had simply switched off the lights and walked away, leaving 4 kilometers of rusting geometry to turn in the dark forever. 9/10 tucked the tug into a gantry cradle designed for something 11 times its size, killed the emissions, and pronounced them invisible. Statistically, it added, there is a non-zero chance a Kessar sweep finds us, in which case I will alert you by exploding. Comforting, said Mateo. I contain a great deal of comfort. It's mostly hydraulic. They had 4 days of drift time before the search pattern would move on, which is a great deal of time in a space the size of a coffin. And Mateo learned things about Naomi in the way one learns about a person under those conditions. Badly, sideways, and all at once. He learned that she hummed while thinking and denied it with real conviction. He learned she had never in her life prepared her own food and approached the heating plate the way one approaches a wounded animal. He learned that Sylthan nobility had a formal courtship etiquette of such staggering complexity that it required a certified adjudicator, and he learned this because he asked, and because she then insisted on demonstrating. "It begins," she said, standing in the 2 clear meters between the benches, "with the offering of the left hand." Which means that your knife hand is occupied and therefore your intentions are peaceful. That's romantic. It's practical. Then the recipient may accept, decline, or, she made a gesture like a bird declining an invitation, defer for consideration, which lasts a season and is very fashionable. Then, the 9 questions. There are 9 of everything with you people. There are 9 of everything with everyone. The Concord is 9 worlds, Matteo. Do try to keep up. She offered her left hand, palm flat and level, ears very slightly forward. Now do it back. He did it back. He did it, apparently, catastrophically, because she made a strangled noise and had to sit down. What? What? You curled your fingers. So? That's the 9th question, said Naomi into her hands. You skipped 8 questions and a season of consideration and proposed a bonding of houses to a woman who was disinherited this morning in a salvage tug over a ration pouch. Well, in my defense, said Matteo, nobody gave me the manual. There are 4 volumes of manual. Then in my defense, nobody gave me 4 volumes. If I may, said 9/10. My archive contains 106 pirate ballads, of which 91 describe courtship. And in 90 of those, the correct next step is abduction by longboat. No, they said together. It was better after that, and worse. Better because the laughing loosened something. Worse because Matteo, lying awake in the cargo netting with the yard turning slowly past the viewport, kept arriving at the same appalling arithmetic. She had burned her entire life down for a hand she couldn't remember attached to a man she'd known for 9 minutes. It was easier to face a firing squad than to be worth that. A firing squad only wanted your death. This wanted him to be someone, and he had no evidence he was. You keep looking at my ears, Naomi said on the 3rd day, without opening her eyes. I do not. You do. It's constant. It's like being observed by a very polite predator. They're just expressive, said Matteo. You can't lie with those. You know that, right? They went sideways when Elena unnamed you, like a shutter closing. There was a pause. Human ears, said Naomi, are unfinished. I want you to know that's the consensus view. 4 species have written papers. They look like something that was interrupted halfway through. They work fine. They work. So does a hinge. What ended the piece was the manifest. She had been picking at the Holloway records for 2 days. Not the sealed tribunal file, which was locked behind 9 worlds, but the mundane commercial paperwork nobody had thought to classify, because nobody classifies freight, docking schedules, consumables, the banal sediment of a working station. Matteo. Her voice had changed. Come here. The screen showed a customs ledger, 9 months of routine traffic, and 1 line highlighted in her careful hand. That's a receipt, he said. That's a receipt for 9 sealed containment cases, delivered to Holloway Drift by Concord courier, 11 days before the outbreak. She looked up. Class 9 biological seals, signed for at the station. Matteo read it again. Then a 3rd time while something cold went walking up the back of his neck. No. The Drift received hollowing cases all the time. It was a quarantine platform, that's what it did. It received them from the outbreak zones, said Naomi. Outward, inward, Matteo, from the Concord core. 9 cases sent to the seal, from the safest worlds in the galaxy, 11 days before a station full of people forgot how to breathe. Her ears had gone flat and forward, and there was nothing polite about her face now at all. It didn't escape. Naomi. It was delivered. Holloway Drift was still where he had left it, which somehow surprised him. 9 years of drift had spread it out along its own orbit like a sentence with the punctuation removed, a long shoal of debris, and at the heart of it the ring section, 3/4 intact, turning with a slow arthritic wobble against the dust. 9/10 went in through the wound Matteo had made himself, and Matteo sat in the co-pilot's cradle and looked at the torn edges of his own worst decision, and found he had nothing witty to say about it at all. "You went quiet," Naomi observed. "I'm savoring the ambience. You're doing the thing with your jaw. I have one jaw. It does one thing." The lattice deck was in the ring's shielded core, and it had survived because it had been built to survive. A memory lattice was the whole reason for a quarantine platform's existence. You could not cure the hollowing, but you could record it. Every mind that came aboard was mapped, indexed, held, so that when the frost took a patient's face and name, the researchers would at least have a copy of what had been eaten. 411 minds, held in a crystal the size of a coffin lid, humming faintly in the dark on 9 years of decayed backup power. "There it is," said Naomi. "There it is," Matteo agreed. "And there's the problem. Because a lattice gave back only what a living mind could reach. It was not an archive you read. It was a lock you opened with the shape of your own head, and there was precisely one person in the galaxy whose head still had the right shape. Everyone else who had stood in this room was dust in a decaying orbit." "I know," said Naomi. "You'd be plugging a live, hollowing lattice into the exact hole it left in you." "I know." "Naomi, that thing takes faces. That's what it eats. You could come out of there not remembering how a door works, and I've seen it. I have watched people be polite about it." "I know, Matteo." She turned. Her ears were forward, flat, absolutely steady. "I have spent 9 years with a hole in my head shaped like a hand. 9 years of being grateful to no one and afraid of nothing I could name. And 9 cases went into this station 11 days before it died, and 411 people are in that crystal, and the only key in the galaxy is the girl who screamed." She sat down at the interface and began, methodically, to unwind the cable. "So spare me the ethics. I've been dead since I was 19. I've just been very well dressed about it." Matteo stopped. "That's actually a good line. I've had 9 years. 9/10 spoke, and for once there was no swagger in it at all. "2 things. First, I have Kessler transponders on approach vector, 4 minutes. Second, and I want this on record, my lady, I have watched 11 owners make 11 very stupid decisions, and this is the first one I would have made myself. Thank you, 9/10. Don't thank me, I'm being sentimental. It voids my warranty." The fleet came in loud. Owen's voice arrived first. Across every band the wreck could still hear, and it had lost every gram of its beautiful, weightless kindness. He spoke about jurisdiction. He spoke about the sanctity of the seal. He spoke, at length, about how the site was a mass grave and not a salvage claim. And Matteo listened to a man trying very hard to sound like law while sounding, unmistakably, like a man arriving early to a fire. And then a second signature bloomed on the scope, green and unhurried, and Elena's guard came out of the dust on the far side of the ring. "House Sylthan," said Owen. "You have no standing here." "House Sylthan," said Elena, "will decide what House Sylthan has." Matteo would remember the next part for the rest of his life. The old woman's voice on an open channel, dry as paper, saying that she had unnamed her daughter before 9 worlds and would answer for it before 9 worlds, and that until the Concord produced the sealed Halloway file in full, no vessel would approach the ring except across the hulls of her guard. It was not an apology. Sylthan matriarchs did not apologize. It was something considerably more expensive. "She's buying us minutes," Naomi said. Her hands were shaking. She looked at them with mild scientific interest, as if they belonged to a colleague. "Then take them," said Matteo, and put his left hand out, palm flat and level. She looked at it for a moment. Then she laid her fingers across it and curled them. "That's the 9th question," he said. "I'm aware," said Naomi. "I've had 4 volumes." Then she closed her eyes, and the lattice took her. It did not look like anything. That was the obscenity of it. She simply sat with her head tipped slightly back and her ears gone soft and unguarded, and the crystal hummed, and out in the dust 109 guns were pointed at each other over a 9-year-old lie. Matteo held her wrist and counted her pulse and told her, quietly and continuously, extremely stupid things. About the bread, about the ribbon vendor, about hinges, on the theory that if the frost came for her faces, it would have to get past his voice first. At 4 minutes and 9 seconds, the crystal spilled. It came out in a torrent onto every screen the tug had. The manifest, 9 cases, the routing chain, a Concord authorization stamp with a seal on it he had last seen from a sentencing post, 411 names in order, alphabetical and unbearable, and a face at an airlock, 9 years young, filthy, terrified, reaching in. Naomi opened her eyes and said his name. The broadcast took 11 minutes to cross the Concord and about 9 seconds to end it. 9/10 did the honors, and did them with relish, dumping the whole spilled lattice onto every band a Class 4 salvage unit can reach, which turns out to be all of them. There was no editing. There was no argument. There was simply a customs ledger, a routing chain, an authorization seal, and 411 names read aloud in a flat synthetic voice into 9 planetary networks at once, while 109 guns hung motionless in the dust and their crews listened to what they had been aiming at. The cases had come from the core. That was the whole of it. In the end, the frost had gotten loose somewhere clean and expensive and well lit, in a place with 9 seats on the tribunal, and the tidiest solution had been to move the evidence outward to a station legally entitled to hold it, so that the ledgers would forever show the hollowing as an outer rim disease of poor people and bad hygiene. 9 cases, 11 days. And then a Sylthan delegation had arrived under seal of peace for a routine inspection that nobody in the Corps had bothered to reschedule, because rescheduling would have required admitting there was something to reschedule around. Owen's fall was not dignified, and Matteo, who had spent 9 years being quietly hated by the man, discovered he took no pleasure in it whatsoever. He watched an arbiter of the 9 try to speak over his own signature on an open channel, watched 3 of the 9 seals go dark on the illuminated writ within the hour, then a 4th, then the Kesar picket simply turn and burn for home without asking anyone's permission. The Concord did not fall. Institutions like that never fall. They shed. But it came apart along 9 seams that morning and never quite went back together. And Matteo found that he had no opinion about the political consequences at all, being mostly concerned with whether Naomi could still identify a chair. She could. She could identify a chair, a hand, a face, and the entire schematic of a Vascan gantry cradle. What she had lost, and she found this out slowly over the following weeks, the way you find a missing tooth with your tongue, were the 9 questions. All of them? All 4 volumes. She said it with terrible cheerfulness. 9 years of adjudicated etiquette gone. I couldn't propose to a houseplant. You proposed to me. I did that badly and on purpose, which is different. The greenhouses came apart more quietly than the Concord and hurt considerably more. Elena did not ask for her daughter back. That was the thing Matteo never forgot. The old woman stood before 9 worlds, admitted the unnaming, refused to withdraw it, and then dissolved her own claim and passed the seat sideways to the cousin with the laugh like a startled bird, because a restored heir could be summoned and married and spent, and an unnamed woman with no house could not. She spent 40 years of standing to buy her child a life nobody could recall her to. They met once afterward, on a landing pad in the rain, and said perhaps 9 sentences to each other, and Naomi cried for an hour in the galley afterward and denied it with real conviction. The lattice went to the families. 411 minds, and no cure. There has never been a cure, but names and voices, and the last recorded thought of a great many people who had been officially declared the victims of a courier with a debt problem. They pardoned Matteo 11 weeks later. It arrived as a document with 9 seals on it, 4 of them from worlds that no longer functionally existed, and he received it in the manner of a man being handed an umbrella by a stranger who has watched him stand in a downpour for the better part of a decade. You're supposed to say something, Naomi told him. Thank you for the umbrella, said Matteo. They went back to Corvath before they left because she wanted to, and because he had never seen the square empty. It was smaller than he remembered, which everything is. The dawn was doing its extravagant nonsense with the copper and the 2 moons. 4,000 seats of black basalt held nobody at all, and the wind had gotten into the ribbon vendors' abandoned stock and was pushing them across the stones in slow black and silver drifts. Holloway remembered in 9 languages, going nowhere. "Rimward," Naomi said. "There's salvage past the Kessar line, and nobody out there has ever heard of me." "There's also nothing out there. There's a reason it's cheap." "I have," said 9/10 from the open hatch. 106 pirate ballads on this subject, and in all of them. "No," they said. Matteo stood on the worn dish in the stone where 4 centuries of condemned idiots had shifted their weight, and understood that he had spent 9 years believing the best thing he would ever do was drag a screaming girl through a burning corridor and then have the decency to shut up about it. He had been wrong. That had been the easy part. Anyone can be brave for 8 minutes. "I remember a hand," Naomi said beside him. "That's what I used to say. 9 years, and all I had was a hand." "And now?" She turned, and her ears went forward, and she looked at him with the whole unguarded ruin of her face. "Now I have the rest of you," she said. "I love you. I have loved you since before I could picture you, which is either the stupidest thing a woman has ever said out loud in this square, or the truest, and I've stopped caring which." "Both," said Matteo. "I checked." And he offered her his left hand, palm flat and level, and curled his fingers. 9 worlds agreed on a thing, and 1 woman stood on a stone and said no, and gave no reason at all, because some reasons are too true to be said in front of a crowd. We like to believe that love is built out of years, out of shared meals and remembered birthdays and the slow accumulation of ordinary evidence. But Naomi had none of that. She had a hand in the dark and a hole where a face should be, and she set fire to every treaty, every title, every house that had ever called her daughter, for a man she could not picture. And Matteo, who had made his peace with dying, who had spent 9 years being a monster so that a stranger could go on being a miracle, found that the hardest thing in the galaxy is not facing execution. It is standing still while someone insists that you are worth saving and having no idea whether they are right. So ask yourself, before the lights come up, who is the hand in your dark? Who pulled you through a door you don't remember, and did you ever learn their name? Or have you simply carried the dead around like a coin you never spend? And the other question, the harder one, is there anyone you would stand in front of with nothing in your hands, with no argument prepared, with everything you own burning quietly behind you? Because most of us are never asked. That is the mercy, and that is the tragedy. We go our whole lives assuming we would be brave, and never once find out. Matteo thought his life's great act was 8 minutes in a burning corridor. He was wrong. Anyone can be brave for 8 minutes. The long part, the part that costs, is letting someone love you afterward. The end. We've reached the end of our story, friends. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to press the like button below and leave your thoughts in the comments. Subscribing to our channel so you don't miss the next story would make us very happy. See you in the next story, friends.